This podcast is brought to you by Progressive. Are you driving your car or doing laundry right now? Podcasts go best when they're bundled with another activity, like Progressive home and auto policies. They're best when bundled too. Having these two policies together makes insurance easier and could help you save. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save nearly $800 on average. Quote a home and car bundle today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $793 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary.
Families have a lot going on. Let Ollie help manage the mental load with new cognitive help supplements for everyone 4 and up, like delicious Lolly Focus Pops or Lolly Mellow Pops for kids. And for parents, try 3 new Brainy Chews to help you focus, chill out, or get energized. Find these cognitive health buddies for the whole fam at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome to Dear Prudence. I'm your Prudence, Jenée Desmond-Harris. Today we'll be discussing how to tell your parents you're omnisexual when you're a teenager, and how to approach a serious relationship with someone whose preteens sleep in her bed and that's not changing anytime soon. Here to help me out is Dan Savage. He's the author of Savage Love, which is America's longest-running sex advice column, and he's the host of the Savage Lovecast. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to have you here, and before we get started, I would love to ask you for one piece of unsolicited advice.
Pay the price of admission.
Say more.
Any relationship that you're going to want to be in, there are things you're not going to get that you want. There are going to be things about your partner that you wish were different that you can't change. Mm-hmm. And you have to be willing to pay the price of admission. You have to be willing to say, you know what? Putting up with this is worth being with you. And so not only am I going to put up with this, I'm not going to complain about it anymore. I'm going to be zen about it. And, you know, it's just like if you go to the amusement park and if you think the ticket for the roller coaster is too pricey, don't ride the roller coaster. Don't buy the ticket. Mm-hmm. Stay off the roller coaster. But don't buy the ticket and then ride the roller coaster and complain the whole time. Right? At a certain point, you have to like accept it. The example I always use with my husband is a little bit of a slob. And I used to follow him around the house, yelling at him to pick this up, put this away. And then one day I just kind of followed him around picking things up and putting things away. And it was like, oh, this is much easier and isn't creating conflict. And I actually kind of don't mind. And so that's the price of admission I pay because it's worth it to ride that ride. It's worth it to have to be the one who does the straightening up. I
like that rule. And it's a catchier way and less long-winded way of saying something I'm always saying, which is everyone has their shit and you just have to decide whose shit you want to deal with.
Exactly.
And then deal with it.
Exactly. But then I think the real trick is you can't then complain about it forever. Right. You haven't paid the price of admission. If you've identified something that kind of annoys you, but you're willing to live with, then live with it and stop generating conflict in the relationship by like fighting about it or picking at it. Just drop it and step around it. You know, it's that shit. You can step in it or step around it.
That's a good one too. Okay, Dan and I will dive into your questions after a short break. Can't get enough Dear Prudence? Then you should definitely join Slate Plus, Slate's membership program. You'll get to hear me answer an extra question every week just for members. With your subscription, you get ad-free listening across the Slate network and unlimited reading on the Slate site, including all Dear Prudence columns, past and present. Go to slate.com/Prudie Plus to sign up. It's just $15 for your first 3 months. Again, that's slate.com/Prudie Plus. Warmer, sunnier days are calling. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never-frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great-tasting meals. As I've said before, I'm not vegan, but for some reason I really like the vegan ones. I don't know, I eat them for lunch. There's just something better about having an actual meal than throwing a bunch of random items on a plate with some hummus, which is what I would normally do. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Crush your wellness goals this May with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients you can trust. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. Head to factormeals.com/prudence50 and use code prudence50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next month. That's code prudence50 at factormeals.com/prudence50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Welcome back. You're listening to Dear Prudence. I'm here with Dan Savage. Let's get started with our first letter. It's titled Sister at a Distance.
I have been feeling more and more like I am at a crossroads in my relationship with my brother. He's a few years older than me. We also have a younger sibling, and we were close, especially during our college years, until his wife came along. They have been married for nearly 15 years. Over the years, she has systematically put a wedge between him and all of us. She's also estranged from most of her own family. She has been rude, cold, whiny, and antisocial most of the time she has been around our family, which hasn't been much in the last decade, following a particularly disastrous Christmas. None of us live close to each other, but we do make an effort to get together a few times a year, but my brother rarely, if ever, joins. For example, he came to our dad's funeral and our grandma's 100th birthday, but he's never met my young kids. Currently, he puts the absolute bare minimum into his relationships with me and the rest of my family. We do a family video chat on Thanksgiving and on Christmas. We occasionally see my sister-in-law in the background, but she doesn't talk to us. Otherwise, he never reaches out or checks in on us, even during major life events like children being born, international moves, new jobs, and so on. He might drop a single sentence or heart a photo in the family chat, but he didn't reach out at all when my or my younger brother's children were born. He talks a bit more with my mother than with us, but she is still almost always the one who initiates contact. And if my sister-in-law is around, he generally will not pick up the phone if any of us call. My mom has to strategically call him during his commute, so he's out of the house. As far as my sister-in-law is concerned, he fully supports her financially. She has never worked except 1 or 2 temp jobs after college. And although we don't have a great picture of what their home life is like, they seem to sleep in separate rooms, and he does all of the cooking and housework. She always has excuses to get out of doing things. She supposedly has some health problems. They may or may not be real. She's gone through lots of doctors. Which still doesn't explain or mitigate all the strangeness or her lack of contribution to the household. On top of that, he has real physical and mental health problems, including severe depression, anxiety, and long COVID. But while he constantly coddles her, we don't see her exhibit much compassion or concern for him at all. She has been extremely controlling throughout their relationship. We have heard her speak very rudely and insultingly to him, and he doesn't bat an eye. He even gave up playing music, which he loves, because it was annoying to her. The last few years, especially since the pandemic and since I've had my kids, I find myself growing more and more angry and resentful about his coldness and distance. I struggle to find compassion, despite knowing about his mental health issues. If you couldn't tell, we come from a family of very non-confrontational people. And in a lot of situations, I have a hard time knowing if I should stay silent or say something. Should I try to confront him and tell him I'm concerned that he's in an emotionally abusive marriage and that it's pushing family relationships to a breaking point? Or should I let him make his own choices, even if it means he's going to stay in that messed up relationship and continue to grow farther away from the rest of us?
Dan, do you have a general rule about whether to confront people, friends or loved ones, if you think they're dating or married to someone awful?
It's tricky. I do think there are times when you have to confront that person. And if that person's not ready to get out of the relationship yet, you're probably going to nuke your relationship with them. If they feel like they have to choose their partner over you, or they feel like they're not in a position that they can leave their partner, it may be even humiliating for them personally to look you in the eye, knowing what you know, knowing what you said. If they agree with you, if they disagree with you, it can be even harder for them. They can, react very defensively and legitimately defensively if you're wrong, if your take on the relationship is wrong. But at a certain point, if you're a friend, if you're a sibling, if you're a parent, you gotta tell somebody the truth, but then you got to keep showing up for them. And I think the most important thing to say to someone when you have this kind of confrontation is, look, I love you. I'll still be there for you. You can turn to me. And if you decide to get out of this relationship, I will show up with a moving van full of empty boxes and not a single I told you so.
Right.
Right? I won't throw it in your face, and I will be there.
Absolutely.
And also, like, listening to this question, the confrontation, what do you have to lose? Nothing. You don't have a really relationship with your brother. You're risking nothing. My
rule is generally that if you just think someone's in a crappy relationship, you should just pretend that you're fine with the person. When you start to think it's abusive is when you have the conversation and offer the moving truck and the lack of judgment. Here, I have to admit, I'm really trying to figure out if the letter writer legitimately thinks this is an abusive marriage or if they are just so hurt by how isolated their brother has become while married to this person and dislike this person so much that they're trying to escalate it to that level.
And they're blaming it all on this person.
Right.
Maybe your brother is an introvert. Maybe your brother didn't enjoy being a part of the family to the same extent that the rest of you enjoyed being a part of this family. And he withdrew. And rather than see his own agency in it, if it's not an abusive relationship, if he hasn't been isolated in this relationship, you're just shifting all the blame onto her shoulders. I got to say, listening to the question, I thought, you know an awful lot about this relationship somehow, despite having very minimal contact with your brother and his wife over the last 2 decades and only catching glimpses of her around the edges of the occasional video chat.
So with all that in mind, I would say to the letter writer, don't let your anger at your brother's wife, which might be totally justified. She might really be a terrible person. But don't let it stop you from talking to him sincerely. Less about your wife is awful and I've had it, and more about your own emotions, your own desire to connect with him. Sometimes I think we miss the opportunity to just actually tell the truth and say how we're feeling and see how it turns out, and then make a plan B if that doesn't work. So try something like this. I miss you. I'd love to talk to you more. I really wish we were as close as we used to be. Do you think we could find some time to get together, just the two of us? Or simply just start texting and calling him more? If he comes off as angry or dismissive, then you have another problem on your hands. If he says, I miss you too, but my wife doesn't let me talk to anyone, then you deploy the line about the moving truck and paying for a lawyer and supporting him and how he needs to get out. But at least check the box of just letting him know that you want a closer relationship with him. Why not?
Or have his wife killed. No, please don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, you can work on hiring a hitman in the meantime. You can multitask. I just think it's easier to blame the wife than to face the reality of his mental health issues and you've drifted apart. And this happens in families even when people aren't married to someone awful.
Yes.
So try to swallow your pride, even though his distancing himself has been hurtful to you. And just reach out, sibling to sibling, and try to connect. I think that has to be the first step. You're listening to the Dear Prudence Show, and when we come back, we'll be reading more of your letters. Stay with us. This episode is brought to you by Fail Better, David Duchovny's new podcast with Lemonada Media. On Fail Better, David, who's experienced both low and high-profile failures throughout his life, explores the vast world of failure, how it holds us back, propels us forward, and ultimately shapes our lives. Each week, he'll chat with guests like Ben Stiller, Bette Midler, and more about how our perceived failures have actually been our biggest catalyst for growth, revelation, and even healing. Through these conversations, he hopes listeners can learn how to embrace the opportunity of failure and fail better together. Fail Better is out now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Dahlia Lithwick, host of Slate's legal podcast, Amicus. If you're listening to this show, you might be interested in Amicus's live show that we're hosting in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, May the 14th. My colleague, Mark Joseph Stern, and I will be talking to some amazing guests, including Sherilyn Ifill and a sitting state Supreme Court justice, all about how originalism, a relatively recently invented way of interpreting the Constitution, has taken over the Supreme Court and radically reshaped the law. It's been doctrinal rocket fuel for the conservative legal movement and facilitated the rolling back of abortion rights, the expansion of gun rights, and the obliteration of the separation of church and state. And as another wildly consequential Supreme Court term careers to its end, the court's originalists are on a tear. But there's something you can do about it, and we hope you'll join us in D.C. on May 14th to explore the possible pathways out of the current situation. Go to slate.com/Amicus Live for tickets.
Welcome back to Dear Prudence. I'm here with my guest Dan Savage to answer your letters, and the next one is titled Queer and Here, Just Not to My Parents.
I'm a 16-year-old woman who identifies as omnisexual. This is very similar to bisexual or pansexual, but basically means that I like all genders. But I'm not blind to gender, and I have a preference. I also have different experiences with different genders and find different things about different genders attractive, in different ways. My parents are large supporters of the LGBTQIA+ community, and I've been attending prides since I was little. But I'm not out to my parents. This is not because they won't support me, but I also have an anxiety disorder and feel as though it's especially difficult for me because I'd want them to know my actual identity instead of just saying I'm bi. My plan has always been that if I were to date a woman, I would simply bring her home and introduce her as my girlfriend. Is this an okay plan? I would then answer any questions afterwards, awkward though it may be. My reservation with this plan is that my mom especially might take offense to this. Why didn't you tell me? But I'm wondering if this seems an okay route whilst avoiding my mom's anger.
Okay, for the sex expert on the call, help me understand why coming out as omnisexual might be more intense or risky or revealing or upsetting to parents than coming out as bisexual. Is there something
I have
there?
no fucking clue.
Okay.
I'm gay. I've read the breakdowns, demarcating the difference between omni, pan, and bi, and I have a hard time holding it in my head. There's a very thinly sliced, fine-grained difference. The letter writer tried to nail it with, I like all genders, but I'm not blind to gender, and I have a preference, which sounds to me like that could be bi or pan as well. But if omni is what you are and that identity is important to you, and it's a better descriptor that comes closer. Great. It exists. It has a name and a pride flag already, and you can have it. But literally, I've read the breakdown 3 or 4 times, and I can't, from memory, tell you what the difference is. And I'm queer myself.
Okay. I thought I might be missing something.
No, I don't think you're missing something. What I really did want to say to the letter writer, though, is, my dad was the last person I came out to because I was afraid of my dad. He was a Chicago cop and had been pretty homophobic when I was little. And he was hurt that I came out to him last, but he understood why I came out to him when I was ready. I can't imagine if your mom and dad are supportive of queer people, that you coming out to them when you're ready in the way that felt right to you to come out with them is anything they're going to begrudge you. And if they do have a feeling about it, your parents are entitled to have a feeling about it. My dad was entitled to feel hurt that I didn't feel safe coming out to him until after I had literally come out to everybody else. And I had to let him feel his feelings, and I could understand why he would be hurt by that. And he was able to understand why I hesitated to tell him or why I waited to tell him.
Right.
And so everything that you're worried about with your mom, I would say to the letter writer, this is what being queer is about. The only thing all queers have in common is that coming out. That's our hero's journey. And it's different for everybody. And it's not going to be frictionless. But the friction, the bumps, the hurdles are what make it a hero's journey as opposed to a lubed up slide. And so, if it's a little rocky with your mom, don't lean into it. You don't have to be psyched about it. You don't have to want it to be rocky, but it's part of it. And then that becomes part of your narrative and your story as a queer person that you can connect with other queer people around. I'm omni. When I came out to my mom, she was hurt I didn't tell her sooner. I'm gay. When I came out to my dad, he was hurt that I didn't tell him when I told my mom. When I waited 4 more years to tell him.
Wow.
And, at the time it felt very fraught and high stakes and a lot of big feelings. And now it's this thing that I can share with other queer people when we're trying to connect around our queerness, despite, the differences between all queer people.
So I'm going to say to the letter writer, listen to Dan because he's been in shoes that are closer to yours and is probably right. But my first thought was, I get if your mom was a homophobic cop and you didn't want to tell her, absolutely feel no pressure. But in this case, it struck me that keeping the secret would be more stressful than just telling, just because I'm not sure what exactly we're afraid of in terms of the reaction. If you simply don't feel ready and can't do it, absolutely don't. But it seems to me that you might feel unburdened and also supported if you could just get this off your chest. And so I came up with some ideas for ways to bring it up non-awkwardly. So on your way to Pride. Hey, I love that you guys have always taken me to Pride. And guess what? That's my flag over there. You know, someone just walked by with it on the float. Or when there's some headline about homophobia or someone coming out, that could be a really good segue. When they ask if you're dating anyone, you could say, FYI, when I bring someone home, who knows what gender they'll be. You guys have always made it clear you're not bigots. I know it's not a big deal. I just wanted you to know so when it happens, you won't feel like I, was keeping something important from you. I think that would be received very well.
I agree. The letter writer is actually one of the few people on earth who could actually legitimately have a gender reveal party that wasn't problematic, because it would be a gender reveal about the gender of the grown-up person who's already, chosen their gender identity when you bring them home to your parents. So you get a cake.
Yeah, okay, someone could jump out of it. And I think the mom would go, oh, honey, that's great. Thanks for telling us. How long have you known you're bisexual? And then the letter writer can say, well, actually, it's omnisexual, which means whatever. The mom will go, oh, interesting. Can you get me a book on that? I'll read about it. I know that it's easy for me to sit here and I don't have to have this intense conversation and say it's easy, it's going to go great. But I think there are a lot of ways in which this could go really, really well and make you feel relief and support, and not many ways in which it could go poorly, whether you do it now or later.
And I want to second and reinforce something that you're saying in your advice to the letter writer who says that they have an anxiety disorder. And yet they're, in a way, by drawing this out or worrying about the parents' reaction, they're creating anxiety. And it really, if you have an anxiety disorder, you should be always looking around your life for ways to diffuse anxiety and to make yourself less anxious. And if your parents are taking you to pride parades and supportive of the entire alphabet, you should get this off your chest. And then you don't have to worry about how it'll be received when you finally tell them or have the girlfriend or the boyfriend or the NB friend. Get it out of the way. Don't be so invested in your identity as somebody with an anxiety disorder that you cling to anxieties.
Right. I mean, you're going to have to worry about college, moving out.
Well, don't make her more anxious.
Okay. I'm just saying, take this off your plate as one of the issues that's making
There could be a meteor heading toward Earth. Donald Trump could get reelected. There's so much.
Democracy is ending.
Yeah, there's so many other things to it. Climate change, extinction, so many other things you could be anxious about. You shouldn't have to worry about this.
But yeah, go ahead and tell and get yourself some relief. This is Dear Prudence. We need to take a break, but when we come back, more letters from you and advice from us. Stay tuned.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
I'm Jenée, and you're listening to Dear Prudence. Dan, are you ready for our last question of the day?
I am.
Okay, it's titled Bed Bugs.
I've been dating Lynn for around a year and a half. She's a widow with a 12-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. I'm divorced with a 17-year-old son. The kids have all met and got along on the 2 vacations we went on together last year. The only thing holding us back is that Lynn continues to co-sleep with both her kids nearly every night. The only time we have adult time together is when the kids go on sleepovers with their grandparents. Lynn started this when she lost her husband 3 years ago. And I understand that, but not her reluctance now. I mean, her daughter's almost a teenager. Lynn wants to talk about marriage, but not the fact that the marital bed is for spouses. I've been pretty frank about why this makes me uncomfortable and how it isn't healthy for her kids. I would understand Lynn sleeping in their rooms if they were sick or needed a cuddle, but I was raised where mom and dad's room was a private space. I respect her kids' bedrooms where I have to knock and ask permission to come in, and I don't think it's asking too much here. She's talking about me selling my place to move in with her family in a rental or us getting our own place together. My question is, where am I sleeping at night? Should be with my future wife and not on the couch or guest room. Lynn is great. Her kids are great. I love them all, but I don't think I'm out of bounds for this. Thoughts?
So the debate about whether co-sleeping at the age of Lynn's kids is good or bad or weird or normal doesn't matter to me. I think it's one of those things where there's differences between cultures and families, and kids with different levels of emotional needs and family values don't care. What I do think, letter writer, is you do not want to be the guy who kicked these kids out of the bed. Kids who have lost a parent and probably need extra comfort in a place they feel safe. Even if you are 100% right according to your worldview and your parenting philosophy, you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that stepdad. There is not a lot of hope for a healthy relationship with them or their mom after that.
I completely agree. 3 is a small number, and losing a parent is hugely traumatic. Mm-hmm. And I understand why these 3 traumatized people, the widow, the children who lost their father, why the kids might be afraid to sleep alone at night. We don't know how their father died. Was it sudden? Was it unexpected? Did they not have time to process the impending death in advance? And they're terrified of their mother disappearing in a moment the way their father did. Like, I can absolutely wrap my head around why. And those kids are actually young, 12 and 8. That's young. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're 15 and 18.
Right.
But his, I would like, if we move in together, I would like to share a bedroom with you and for that to be our bedroom. And so before I sell my house, before we move in together, take as much time as you need to transition back to the kids sleeping in their own room so that when I arrive, it's not me. I'm not the meteor that hit this relationship, and I'm not taking something from your kids that right now they still obviously need. And so you need to give them time and space. And now's not the time to talk about moving in. Mm-hmm. I just don't think he should be the reason why these kids can't sleep in their mom's bed anymore if they still need to do that right now. When they're not sleeping in their mom's bed anymore, that's the time to have the conversation about moving in together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, letter writer, you say she's talking about me selling my place to move in with her family or we get our own place together. That's just a talk. It wasn't an order. It doesn't mean it's happening and now you have to figure out where to put these kids. She's talking about it and you can talk back and say, it doesn't feel like a good idea right now because when we move in together, I'd like us to sleep in the marital bedroom and that's not possible. So let's just put a pin in it until it is.
Yes. And then it's on her to work through this with her kids in an appropriate way to transition them out of her room. There were times I, went to my mother's room when I was 10, my mom and dad's room. My dad was often away because of his crazy hours as a cop. And I don't think that was inappropriate when I was 10. It would have been inappropriate when I was 16. And yeah.
But the important thing is it was you and your parents deciding what was inappropriate. It wasn't some extra person from the outside imposing their views on your family.
And trauma and grief are beasts. At first, grief, I describe grief as a room you're trapped in, and then grief is a room you find yourself in every once in a while, and then grief is a room you visit intentionally. And these 3 people are still grieving. And you have to, if you love them the way you say you love them, if you love her the way you say you love her, you love these kids the way you say you love them, you have to deprioritize your own ideas about how parenting ought to work and your own preferences and give them more space and time to heal and your support as they heal. Part of that support can be your reasonable expectation if and when we do move in together, what our lives are going to look like, including the sleeping arrangements. And that could incentivize the mom to begin transitioning her kids without you blackmailing mom. Like, I'll move in, but first you gotta, when I move in, what's that going to look like is a conversation, not an order.
I also would bet $1 million that this difference of opinion represents about 12 other differences of opinion when it comes to parenting and worldview around raising children. And it's worth sort of taking some time to look at those. I mean, you say her kids are great, but the assumption in this letter is all kids should be raised the way my parents raised me, right? So you're saying at my house, the parents' bedroom was private and sacred. And you're assuming that that means that's the right rule. I'm guessing there are a lot of other instances where your parents did something one way and Lynn might do something another way, whether it's about homework or curfews or when you can get up from the dinner table or doing laundry. And it's worth taking the time to sort out all of that before you move in together, because the kids are great is not going to get you that far when they start doing things that you don't like.
I had 2 step parents. Step parent isn't a parental role, it's an advisory role. That you were there to like advise, for the other parent to bounce things off of, and for the kids to maybe come to you. But you didn't assert yourself as a step parent. That there was some things you had to like step off. I do want to say to the letter writer's credit, you know, he says the parents' room was sacred, but he also says the kids' room was sacred, that they would knock before entering the kids' room. And that I have much more, that appeals to me much more than mom and dad's room is sacred and the kids have no privacy. Right. Privacy is something mom and dad have, and it should be. Privacy is also something the kids deserve and they should have.
Definitely. So that's a good thing. You say you like the kids, and that's great, but that doesn't mean that you're going to fit in the household in a peaceful way with the kids. So you've only been dating a year and a half. That's not that long. Take it easy. Take some time. Wait until it feels exciting and positive to everyone, and not like something where you're going to go in fighting.
And that might mean waiting until the kids have, of their own accord, return to their own rooms.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, feel free to hang out all you want. And I don't really have a recommendation about when you can get adult time other than when they're at their grandparents. But I will say that, like, beds exist during the day and kids go to school generally. So think a little bit more creatively.
Half-empty movie theaters exist during the day. The roof exists during the day. The single-seater bathroom at your office exists during the day. There's a lot of places to fuck.
Yeah, you can figure something out. I'm confident in you. Okay, those are all the questions we have for this week. It's been fun and hopefully helpful. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed this.
For more of Dan, listen and subscribe to the Savage Lovecast. New episodes every Tuesday. Do you need help getting along with partners, relatives, coworkers, and people in general? Write to me. Go to slate.com/Prudie. That's slate.com/PRUDIE. The Dear Prudence column publishes every Thursday.
If you'd like to hear your question answered on the podcast, we are looking for letter writers who would be comfortable recording their questions for the show. You can stay anonymous.
Dear Prudence is produced by Se'era Spragley Ricks and me, Jenée Desmond-Harris, with a special thanks to Maura Currie. Editorial help from Paula De Verona. Daisy Rosario is senior supervising producer, and Alicia Montgomery is Slate's VP of audio. I'm your Dear Prudence, Jenée Desmond-Harris. Until next time.
Pulling up to Mickey D's just for drinks? Oh yeah, that's me. Nothing extra, just perfection and a straw. Coming in hot for the coldest cups on the block. Because there are drinks. Then there are drinks from McDonald's.
Ever combine an ice-cold frozen Coke with piping hot fries? Try frozen drinks any size for $1.49. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.